Oh, that was some peaceful music for the hard topics we're going to be talking about today.
That was really, really, really peaceful.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
For those of you who are new to me, I am Charles McFall. I got podcasting, joining Anthony and Tiffany in the Ambulance Academy. And there is Tiffany, fresh from putting out fires at work.
Fresh.
And Anthony working on the work-life balance there. We're going to hit all of that today. So you guys want to just jump in with some of the questions from YouTube, or how would you like to do it?
Sure. Jump right in, honestly. Do you want to just ask us questions, or we ask you questions?
Yeah, no, I've got here on the YouTube channel, you can, people make comments, of course, and reply back to the videos that are out there. So here's some of the summarized questions from the comments recently from YouTube. One of the biggest ones is, what do you do when people can't pay?
People as in
patients. Yeah, like if you take a trip and they can't pay for it. And I'm assuming maybe the writer of this is thinking like 911 or something, but how's that look in the private ambulance service?
So I want to make sure I'm offering as much clarity as possible. But I would say for the most part, we have as a private ambulance service, we have the right to accept a patient, whether it's repetitive for dialysis or a discharge or not, because we are not rendering aid to someone that needs life-saving support, if that makes sense. If we were operating in a 911 kind of mode, and people needed our support, like if I'm working at an event, my company is working an event, and we are hired to transport from the scene of an incident at the event, then I don't have an option basically to deny transport, if that makes sense. And in that case, I'm hoping that when I bill the patient's insurance, I'll get paid. If not, I bill them. Anthony has a thing where he sends them to collections. But in terms of like repetitive transports or discharges, I get all the patient's information. So their name, date of birth, their policy number. If they have a secondary, I get that. I send it to my billing service. They verify the patient's insurance for me. They will come back and say, yes, the patient has active insurance with no out-of-pocket, or yes, the patient has active insurance with X amount of out-of-pocket. Maybe they have a secondary that will pick up whatever their primary doesn't cover. And I just make a informed decision based on that bit of information. I can go so much deeper into this. I don't know how deep, we have time to go. But I guess to make a long story short, you basically have more control as a private ambulance service that is serving not the general population, but doing non-emergency transports versus if you were doing 911, so that you can make an informed decision as well. Based on the information that you get.
Absolutely. Absolutely right, Tiffany. I think, it's our jobs as, owners and managers and people in this space to do our due diligence as a private service in terms of, putting our business and our employees in a position to succeed. And so part of that is not accepting trips a lot of the time that is not going to pay out. And that could look different at, different times of the year. At the beginning of the year, out-of-pockets are high. And so it may be wise to maybe not do as many discharges because out-of-pockets are high and insurance are funny and they're picky and don't want to pay out. Or maybe you can't take a dialysis patient because you may already have too many patients who have high out-of-pockets. And so it's not smart to take on another one. So you just have to do your due diligence, consider the time of the year, consider, the services that you're offering and your patient load. And from there, try to take on the right patients and take on the right trips.
Yeah, determine how much money you can afford to not be able to, or afford to lose, I guess, for lack of better terms.
And that brings up that, okay, so you have a regular patient that you've taken for years, and you're talking about that out of pocket, which always hits right now this time of year in January where insurances renew, those kind of things. what would you do? Do you just stop taking the patient that you've taken for years and pick them back up after out of pocket, or how do you handle that?
Good question. So I have a patient in particular. She's been my patient for many, many years, and she has, I want to say, Aetna insurance, and it's probably a Medicare Advantage plan or something like that. And so her insurance every year starts over, and her out of pocket is around like $14,900 every year. And so I kind of use it, me personally, because I'm in a position where I can, or have been in a position where I can, where I kind of use it as a savings account. And so I just say, okay, well, I know that if I bill out these claims, 9 times out of 10, I'm not going to get paid anything because out of pocket is so high, I probably won't get paid until June, quite frankly. And so that's determined on the mileage and all there are different scenarios for different plans, essentially. But just for this patient in particular, I don't get paid almost for 6 months. And so instead of me submitting those claims to billing, I hold them. And what billing does at the beginning of each month, they will say, hey, this person has, out of that $14,900, they have $10,000 left, or they have next month $6,000 left, and so on and so forth. Sometimes it doesn't move as quickly as I would hope for. And then, at some point when I'm like, okay, I can eat $2,000 or whatever the amount may be, maybe I'll hold it till it gets down to zero. Then now I submit all my claims, and then I get a huge payday, maybe about, I don't know, $35,000 to $40,000. So I kind of use it as a savings, for lack of better terms. But in other cases, like some other patients, they might have a $9,000 deductible, or whatever it may be, and I might just bill those, and that just means I'm eating the cost. And when I say eating the cost, that means it's very likely that my dialysis patients, who are mostly on fixed income, even we submit the claim, the insurance does not pay the claim, so we by law have to bill the patient. 9 times out of 10, the patient is not going to be able to afford a $9,000 bill, if that makes sense, over time. So when I say eat the cost, that just means I'm making a conscious decision to not send them to collections.
And Anthony, what makes you decide when to send somebody to collections?
Good question.
So it kind of just depends on the type of service that that we're offering. And so for patients that we take on a recurring basis, we understand that ambulance transport is expensive, and if I'm taking you to wound care or dialysis multiple times a week, an A trip and a B trip, 9 times out of 10, 10 times out of 10, you're going to be able to afford the cost of my services. And so for those particular patients, I just do what my sister just mentioned. I eat that cost. But if we're doing discharges, if we're helping out a hospital or another facility, or if someone calls us up and they say, hey, I need to go to the ER, or I need to go to this doctor's appointment and my insurance isn't going to pay, then that's when we have our collections agency on the back end to make sure that we recoup all of our money for these one-off discharges, just in case the patient doesn't pay the invoice that they will get from using our services. And so it's just kind of going back to kind of doing your due diligence, knowing what you can afford, and knowing when to deploy I guess your options, which is A, just eat the cost, which is mostly reserved for recurring patients, or B, deploying those extra resources, sending those invoices out, making sure you have a collections team that can go get you that extra money that you may need. And so all those things make all the difference. Yeah.
I find when we talk, finances, of course, that emotions come into it, and I've seen both sides of it. Of it's not worth our time. When maybe we could have stretched out a little bit and said, okay, we're going to help this person, even though on paper it might not be worth our time. It'll be fine. Mm-hmm. To the ones where I had a manager working for me, and she wanted to save everybody, and this person would call up, it's like, I just need to get my wife to her doctor's appointment. It's like, well, does she need a wheelchair or anything? It's like, no, I just need a ride. It's like, we're a stretcher-based ambulance. We don't. And she would just have her heart broken every time. It's like, but what kind of education did you do to that person on the phone to help them figure it out? Because all they know is medical transport or ambulance or whatever. So in y'all's experience, what what education have you had to do over the phone to patients? One, to help them understand why it costs so much, because it's always a question. Why insurance isn't covering it? Yeah, that kind of thing.
A lot of education. I think for starters, I'll kind of hone in on dialysis patients because they are our patients that we can spend time educating, because a lot of the education, it takes time too, because it's a lot of information for them. So for starters, I start with like a welcome packet. And in the welcome packet, it breaks everything down so they have it to read as well. Maybe not themselves if they're older, but maybe a family member or younger, just a family member that can understand it as well. But, just explaining that, hey, like I tell them specifically about their insurance. You have this type of insurance right now. Based on this insurance that you have right now under this plan, this will cover your dialysis transports, da 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 da. If they have Medicare, I explain to them, you have Medicare. Right now, Medicare has approved you. However, we're going to have to make sure we have a good relationship with your different clinicians or your home health team or your PT, OT team, so that we're able to consistently get documentation to support and show the medical necessity of, you needing stretcher. When that stops, or if that stops, or if Medicare deems that the documentation that we begin to submit or are submitting is no longer acceptable, then we're going to run into a problem. So I explain this to them ahead of time so they're not caught off guard, but they're also involved in helping me, get the things done that I need to get done. If they have a Medicare Advantage plan, which usually are the plans that have the high deductibles or deductibles at all, at the beginning of the year, I explain to them. So say they come to me in the third quarter, September or something like that. I say, hey, you have this insurance. This insurance right now, this plan that you have, it is going to cover your dialysis transports at 100% with no payment or no bill to you. However, at the beginning of the year, this is what's going to happen. You're going to have a high out of pocket. I won't be paid for my services for X amount of months. I try to educate them to let them know, like, hey, do you need to have this type of plan? Why do you have a Advantage plan? I try to connect them to a third party that has no interest in myself per se or our company, but just to connect them to an insurance broker that can explain things to them in detail so that, if they're getting to dialysis or dialysis treatment and getting to dialysis is their top two priorities, then them getting an Advantage plan that gives them $100 food stipend every month, probably, even though it means a lot to them, if they're going to miss out on transportation because I no longer can afford to take them when the new year hits, and no other company probably wants to either, then they might need to be more educated on, okay, you need to prioritize, what's important. So I've had a lot of patients that they weren't necessarily mine, but would call me, saying that their company kicked them to the curb because, their out of pocket is high, it's not covering their transport, and, they're stressed out, they don't know what to do. But they don't know that they just think that their insurance covers everything. And so it's just important that we let our patients know that that's just not how it is. Like insurance, you have it, but you have it and you have a patient responsibility as well. But since dialysis transport is so frequent, we know that it's something that most people cannot afford to pay for. So I think it's just good to begin to have these conversations with them initially. And then as we get closer to open enrollment season, maybe like the beginning of the fourth quarter, start to connect them and talk to them about other options that still serve them with their dialysis needs, maybe they have diabetes and like all these other things that they need to have addressed. Yeah. It addresses everything, but it puts it in priority properly to where they don't have these huge out of pockets. And maybe it might make more sense for them to become a Medicare patient. or it's just educating. Like it's just a
Yeah.
long conversation.
Yeah.
Yep. And then I also
I feel like we're case managers.
Yeah,
That's a big part of our
yeah.
role. We're social workers to a certain extent. But go ahead, Tiff. I cut you off.
I was gonna say with dialysis patients, I also get their case managers involved as well, because a lot of the case managers don't know, and then they have the same problem. Like they're like, "Dang, I have this patient that absolutely needs stretcher, but nobody's willing to take them because they have a $14,000 out of pocket," and so they're kind of in a bind as well. So I try to do a lot of educating on their behalf so that they can, in turn, educate their patients or connect them to other resources as well.
That's it. It seems like ambulance companies really should start diving into. We've dove into billing, right? Having our internal, to a point, having internal billing people. We need to start diving into casework and social work, is because the caseworkers that work for a nursing home were interested in taking care of the nursing home.
Yeah.
Caseworkers, social workers that work for dialysis clinic are interested in just making sure that patient gets there. Now, that's not their only interest. I met some great social workers, and they really do try to help. But at the end of the day, they have 50, 60, whatever patients that they have to manage on a schedule, who are calling them not just about, hey, I need to make sure I get there tomorrow. They're calling them about everything else in their life.
Yeah.
And it seems like ambulance companies and business owners shy away from that. You guys, what the biggest thing I see with the two of you, with your companies, is you don't seem to shy away from anything. Oh no, that's for somebody else to handle. You both kind of dive into going, oh, if this is a problem, I'm going to tackle it. What made you think that way?
I think number one, if I'm being transparent, it's in the best interest of the business. Unfortunately, that obviously we're serving the community, but we're running a business and we want to make sure we're doing everything to retain our customers and continue to grow and provide good services. But also, unfortunately, the insurance space is fast changing. The people are always trying to solicit, and a lot of people just don't know. And so they'll sign up for something or change a plan or make this change, and they just don't know, what's at stake. And so I think a part of providing this service and, to the community is also trying to educate them and kind of guide them in the best, what's best for them. And sometimes it's not always what's best for us, if I'm being transparent. I've made decisions for people just because I feel like this is the best situation for you. So that can be even, encouraging people to move on from our business. If you had, for instance, a stroke and you needed our services for, 3, 4 months, 5 months, whatever the case may be, and you've done your rehab and you've progressed in a way where you want to start walking or maybe use another service. I know this is kind of getting off topic, but it's been situations where people wanted to stay with us because they love us, love our team, they love the reliability of our service. And I, had to kind of pull them aside and say, hey, this is remarkable. Your progression has been remarkable. I know you want to stay with us. And you may not want to go to the other company that you were using beforehand, but you should, because our service should be a last resort. And if you're making progress, you want to continue to make progress. And at this particular point, we're holding you back. And so, but now I don't want to go too off in a tangent. But yeah, that's where we come from in this space.
So we talked about holds and the patients not paying and those kind of things.
Yeah.
Another related question from our YouTube channel comments was, so how do we get paid? Is it net 30? How do insurances do? Which is a very, very good question.
Yeah, that's a great question. So it just depends. Medicare typically tries to pay out in 14 or 15 days, and Medicare is the standard. So most insurance companies try to stick to that. And so most insurance companies, private insurance, whether that's Humana pays even faster. Humana can pay out in 7 days, but United Healthcare, it can be around that 14 to 15 day mark. Some insurances do pay out longer. Some is not 30.
I definitely dealt with some that did 6 weeks was their standard of payout.
Yep. And it can be even longer than that. If you have a process where you have to do a prior authorization, that could be a 30-day approval. And then the payout on top of that could be another 2 weeks to 4 weeks. And so it could extend out to really 2 months, depending on the insurance and their process, which sucks. But more often than not, you're going to be within that 2 week, 14 to 15 day period where most insurances are going to pay out for the services rendered.
And that's if you have all your paperwork right, and that's if they woke up in a good day that morning and their wife didn't leave them, the dog didn't die, and all this.
Yep.
Because it
Yep.
seems that we get rejected on obvious qualifying
Oh my gosh.
transports. So what happens with that process?
We can, try to go through like an appeal process and stuff like that, which can extend that process out even longer. Um, but sometimes, we just don't get paid, but that's why it's important to kind of know your customer avatar, have a good relationship with your billing department, know what insurances are going to pay out. Before we take trips, we consult with our billing department. We talk about the type of trip that it is, where it's going, where it's coming from, the insurance, the out of pocket, the likelihood of it getting paid. And so that way, if we do the service, we kind of know the potential of us getting paid versus us not getting paid. But I mean, you can appeal it, but at the end of the day, it's been countless times where, transports are just not paid out because insurance just say, hey, no, we're not, we're not going to pay for this. But that's rare for us now because we do the due diligence up front. But yeah, it's been times where we struggle to get paid from insurance. Yep.
Tiffany, we're talking about delays on getting paid and how quickly or not quickly insurance pays out. But this whole, for Medicare, the whole pre-authorization process, it messed up the dialysis world because they wanted to be able to call and tell me if these are the days for you where they wanted to call and they wanted a yes right now, and you took them home this afternoon because they just got dropped or whatever, or they're going to be here tomorrow, we need you to pick them up, and they expected you to say yes and you work out the insurance later. Now it's you got to give us a couple of days, right?
So how I handle I can only speak for like my service area. Like I'm in the area now where it's so inundated with ambulance services that I can no longer like wait. I can no longer tell a social worker, hey, like send me the documentation. I can give you a yes after, Medicare approves it. I have to go ahead and say yes, that will transport the patient. Medicare will pay us for 3 consecutive trips, even if it's not approved.
Right.
But
So you have a week basically.
No, yeah. I let the case manager know, like, I need this stuff today. Like I need the physician's signature on the PCS. I need it to be completed properly. I need all the documentation that you can find on this patient. I'll review the documentation. If I feel like it's not sufficient, I'll go ahead and be like, I don't think this is going to work. But I'm not the end all be all sayer, so I submit it anyway. And then I still transport the patient. I also, like, since we're talking about education, I educate the patient to let them know, like, hey, we have your documentation, we have everything we need. However, it's up to Medicare to determine whether or not they feel you have or you meet medical necessity to be transported via ambulance. And so I kind of let them know it's a high chance that they will be approved based on the paperwork that I review. But, there's also a chance that it won't be approved. And so I always just make sure that they're well informed that this is just not up to me. It's up to Medicare. If you have a problem with it, call them, which they're not going to answer the phone with them anyway. But it's so funny because patients, I have a patient I just accepted yesterday, and I told her the same. And she was like, yeah, we called Medicare and they said it was a go. And I think that is so funny because, of course, to the member, the insurer is always going to assure them that, the transport is covered. Like it's not a big deal. But I have to tell them on the back end, I'm like, these people don't want to pay us. Like, that's what they're supposed to tell you. Because not Medicare in particular, but like other insurances, you pay for it. So, they're going to tell you that it's going to be covered, or, they're going to tell you what you want to hear. But I'm like, on the back end, They don't want to pay us. And if they do pay us, especially for like a long distance trip, it's going to be pennies. So, I just try to make them aware that this is what they're telling you on the phone, but this is what we have to go through on the back end. And so it's just not the same thing. And I just try to make sure I am upfront and honest with them so that they're not surprised if, it doesn't work out for them in the end. Which is often a lot, actually, because Medicare does not, I don't give a dang on how good the paperwork seems sometimes. Like, it could just be that they have rules that change. They might say, well, we accept documentation up to 90 days, and then they'll say, well, so I'll submit something within 90 days. And I'm like, you just approved it on the last 60-day cycle. Well,
Right.
Yeah.
I approved it because, or they must have approved it because of XYZ. I'm like, well, it's the same documentation. It was within 90
Exact
days.
same documentation.
Yes.
What's the difference? And they can't define anything for me. They're just like, well, it's just old. You need to get new documentation. I'm like, well, can you tell me like what the definitive time frame is that you guys expect new documentation? So now I just try to get new documentation every 60 days at this point because it's just
and that's the thing as business owners. It's on us, unfortunately, to educate everybody in the process because everybody's under the mentality that the money's there. You get paid. Even at the dialysis clinics, they don't handle the billing part of it. They don't handle the high end of it. They come in, clock in, as most of us do who don't run companies. You come in, you clock in, you clock out. You expect that paycheck to be there in 2 weeks. And you do your job, and your job is usually not the finances or the insurance. And so when they're calling you, going, I got 5 other services, like, but legally they have to do the same thing we do. Period. Well, I hate this rush crap. And when I ran a company, I was like, well, I hate. It took me a long time to get that mentality of I hate taking a patient and looking at that patient and dropping them because it's adversarial. It's adversarial to the clinics. I want a partnership with everybody. I want to go, hey, we're in this together because we are, but nobody else wants to see it that way. It feels like, and it was the take the patient, but how quickly? So you got, let's say yesterday, they call you, they offer you a patient, you have to say yes, and they're getting you the paperwork today, and then you're going through that Medicare process. How quickly do you drop them in that process if it comes back denied, or it's called non-affirmed is what they like to say.
Non-affirmed. This is a per patient, by case basis. Honestly, if I lay eyes on a patient and I see it's just so clear, like they're dang bed confined. If there is a fire in their home, they're gonna die. If somebody cannot, if somebody isn't there to help them get out, or other things. But if it's just very clear to me that it's just I need to make sure I get the proper documentation, then I may, work to do so, and I might extend it beyond the 3 round trips, which is the week of transport.
Because if it does approve, it gets back paid.
It gets back paid. But it's just a slippery slope. It's a sticky situation because you just still don't know, if Medicare will approve. Anthony, you can speak to one of your patients that it took probably like 4 months. You remember? I don't want to say her name since it's, HIPAA, but it took a long, we can't hear you. Can you hear us?
Yeah, you're muted, man.
Yeah.
No?
Well, I'll explain.
Okay, you tell the story.
We had a patient, I think the patient was getting approved, all fine and dandy. The patient lived up like at a top floor apartment, but the apartment was like, I'm not lying, probably like close to 20 steps to get to her door. She was bed confined. She was nonverbal. She was altered a lot. Like she had a lot going on. Could not transfer on her own. Very obvious. And again, Medicare was approving it all the same before. And for whatever reason, they didn't like something. They saw something that was contraindicating another note, like within the note. Like maybe something said the patient was able to transfer on her own or ambulate with the walker, but then all these other things are saying she cannot. So anytime there's conflicting information, they'll go with the one that they don't have to pay. So a lot of that is just now you got to go to the home health or whoever is creating a note and explain to them like, hey, your note is confusing and we're not able to, make it make sense to Medicare, which takes a long time for them to alter their note. And it's just a lot. And so Anthony went back and forth. He had to go to different hospitals with the patient's loved one. I'll say he lost his mom's ID or something at the hospital. Like her ID was left at the hospital.
No.
So in order for him to retrieve the notes that you can retrieve usually via your phone app or something like that, he had to put in like a picture of her ID because he was not her what is it called? Her power of attorney. Mm-hmm. So you back. So it was just like a long process, like so because he couldn't retrieve the notes. So there's just a lot of back and forth with like a huge hospital system trying to get notes because they have to be within the time range. And so it took like probably 4 months, maybe longer.
It took a while. It took a while.
The notes, but when we got them, they proved everything. And so he had a good payday when it happened, but he chose to continue to transport her.
Sure.
Because he was very confident that the notes existed somewhere. It was just a matter of getting our hands on the notes.
Yep.
So, you know.
And that's a risk because at some point it could have been no, and you end up eating 4 months of transport. But it can be worth it at the end. I know it's time for you to go, Anthony. So we'll throw out this last question, which is a great question. Do we teach business owners how to build up ambulance businesses?
As in
coaching, do we train potential business owners?
Absolutely, positively. I think we are all three not only very experienced in it, but also passionate about, educating people properly. We're not in it for the money. We are not in it for the money because we run our own ambulance services. We definitely could, we don't not looking to make a living off of consulting. It's really just really about properly educating people so that they know either what they're going to get themselves into prior to investing a whole lot of money and time and blood, sweat, and tears into a startup, or if they're already, involved in, they're having struggles, which I know you are, because we all are. I'm still having struggles. Just properly being able to guide people on, options and alternatives and things that are before them to help them to solve their problems.
Always finding that best flow today and finding that work-life balance. So with that, I'll just leave it with, for the love of God, if your family member is bedbound, don't put them on the 3rd floor of any building. We appreciate that.
Please don't.
We'll be back again with some live Q&A in the next couple of weeks. So just watch this channel for it to pop up. And in the meantime, hit us at info at ambulanceacademyonline.com. You can hit us there, or you just go to ambulanceacademyonline.com and sign up for some of the information there. So thank you guys. We appreciate it. We'll catch up next time.
Sounds good, guys.
All right.
Later.
Peace out.
Bye.